Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on our second session of our Strategic HR webinar series. I hope you see the presentation and hear as well. In case you have any issues, please put it in the chat. Esther is here with me to facilitate the call. So our focus for today is in a pivotal aspect of strategic HR, workforce planning, and analytics. In our rapidly evolving business landscape, the need for precise workforce planning backed by solid analytics has never been more important. Companies, startups, or enterprises are really increasingly recognizing the value of a data-driven approach, so they ensure that their human resources align with their business objectives. So today we're going to delve into the significance of this topic, touch upon the theory behind it, and also look at some practical exercises so we can deepen your understanding. Throughout this webinar, we'll be engaging in interactive activities to make this session as beneficial and relevant for everyone as possible. And our call is being recorded, as we will share the recording on our website. But please don't leave right away, because you're going to earn a certificate of completion if you still stay till the end. So before we jump into our topic today, let's do a little housekeeping. To ensure interactivity, we will run several polls during the call, interactive exercises, where I will ask you to use the voting button you see also now on the right-hand side of the presentation I'm sharing. Whenever I will ask you to use it, you just click on the voting button and the relevant exercise or poll, whichever will come up for you. The voting is always anonym, so we will only share the total results. No one, neither myself, will see your individual answers. On the call with me is Esther, as I said. She's my co-founding partner in Highbridge, and she will make sure during the webinar that all your questions are addressed. So feel free to drop any questions during the call in the chat box. During the call, we're going to keep everyone muted and camera off in order to avoid background noises and any kind of distraction. This call is scheduled to be 90 minutes, and we will make sure to finish on time. Any questions before we jump in? I see someone typing, so let's wait for that. No, thanks. Super, then let's jump in. So let's set the stage for what's ahead. We've crafted today's session with a mix of foundational knowledge, practical insights, and some interactive exercises. Our aim is really to ensure that you leave with tangible takeaways and a clearer understanding of the role of analytics in workforce planning. We will begin by defining workforce planning, exploring its components, and understanding why it's crucial for any successful organization. Next, we're going to transition into the world of analytics, highlighting its transformative potential in HR processes. Moreover, we're going to discuss the challenges faced in workforce planning and share strategies to overcome them. And of course, we value your insights and experience, so we carved out spaces for interactivity, as I mentioned before. All in all, expect a blend of theory, application, and some collaboration today. So by the end of the training, you will understand the critical steps of SWP, Strategic Workforce Planning, what to look out for, and what tools there may be assisting you. SWP is a very complex exercise, so it is practically impossible to master it during a 90-minute session. But what we can reasonably set as an achievable goal is that you will be able to understand why it's necessary, start thinking through the process and the stakeholders necessary to be involved, and at least start the discussions internally. The rest, you might as well outsource to us. If you are an expert, however, your input is very welcome throughout the lesson, so we make sure that the community, we all learn from each other. So let's get going, shall we? So let's start with some eye-catching facts that will have a transformative effect on the workforce. The first is AI, AI's profound impact on the workforce. According to a comprehensive report by the World Economic Forum, the rise of machines and algorithms in our workplaces is predicted to have a radical shift in the job market by already 2025. We're looking at the creation of 133 million new roles while witnessing the displacement of at least 75 million jobs. So this isn't just a shift, it's really a transformation. It underscores the imperative for businesses to adapt, rethink traditional roles, and ensure their workforce is prepared for this change. Just out of curiosity, this morning I searched for new job postings for artificial intelligence in the EMEA region on LinkedIn. There are over 2,500 new job postings out there. The second transformative effect is the rise of gig economy. The gig economy isn't a passing trend, it's really becoming the norm. So current trajectories suggest that by 2027, the majority of workers in the US will be freelancers or contract-based. This really challenges our traditional understanding of job stability, benefits, and the employer-employee relationship. Organizations must recognize and adapt to this shift, ensuring they are equipped to manage, motivate, and retain gig workers effectively. The third trend that I highlighted here is remote work. Gartner's research provides another glimpse into the future of work, saying that by 2025, 70% of all workers are expected to be working remotely for at least 5 days a month. This is quite a big number, especially considering the number of blue-collar workers who by definition cannot work remotely or can work remotely only to a limited time. This new mode of working brings with it a host of challenges and opportunities, of course, from ensuring robust technological infrastructure and cybersecurity to fostering team collaboration and maintaining a company culture in a virtual environment. Organizations really need to strategically plan for a predominantly remote workforce. These are really just a few trends I chose to put here. We will mention a couple more later on. I wanted only to emphasize that the future of work is undeniably dynamic and organizations must be proactive in their approach to stay ahead. Being data-driven is not only a nice to have, it's a must-have. So let's start working on it now, today, with this webinar. So SWP is a systematic process that ensures you have the right people with the right skills in the right places at the right time. SWP is more than headcount budgeting. It's a qualitative as well as a quantitative process. It goes deeper, considering not just numbers, but also the skills, the potential, adaptability, and of course, the strategic fit of the workforce. It's less about scheduling resources by the day we will need them. It's much more a longer term plan aligned to the business strategy, usually 1 to 5 years, depending on the speed of change in your industry. Good strategic workforce planning is like creating a masterpiece in architecture. It's not just about ensuring a building stands tall, but it's about how it looks like, the functionality, and of course the foresight for the future, how we will use the rooms, the buildings, how we will pay for its use, etc. It's very similar in our organizations. We don't just need people, we need the right people in the right roles at the right time and at the right cost. So let's look at the 4 foundational criteria that act as our guiding principles in strategic workforce planning. These aren't just buzzwords, but really the pillars on which our workforce strategy rests. Let's explore each of them and understand why they are absolutely pivotal. The first one is the right size. So when we talk about the right size in strategic workforce planning, we're discussing a careful balance. It's about having just the right number of people, not too many that it results in inefficiencies or redundancies, and of course not too few that it leads to operational challenges and service delays. In a perfectly sized organization, which of course never exists, but nearly perfectly sized, we experience minimal friction, ensuring positions are filled adequately and promptly without the additional overhead being overstuffed. The second pillar is the right shape. So here we dive deep into not only organizational design, but also competencies and skills that drive our organization forward. It's not just about filling positions, but ensuring that those in those roles have the essential competencies needed to execute the company's strategy. Moreover, we also touch upon succession management. Do we have the next line of leaders ready? Are we prepared for sudden exits or retirements? The third pillar is right cost. It's not merely about cutting expenses, but achieving cost efficiency. In the world of HR, it's about ensuring that our investments in talent give us the desired returns. We need to ensure that our workforce is not only effective, but also efficient. So by aligning our workforce strategy with our financial goals, we can ensure that costs are not just managed, but also manageable, giving us a much bigger flexibility and financial agility to navigate uncertainties. The fourth pillar is the agility, right agility. In today's rapidly changing business environment, agility is more crucial than ever. We need a workforce that's agile, resilient, and flexible. They should be able to adapt to changing conditions, pivot when necessary, and always be ready to grasp new opportunities. It's about building a culture and capability that ensures our teams can maneuver through disruptions and still stay course to our strategic objectives. So let's think about why we need strategic workforce planning. We talked about big changes in the business world earlier. More use of AI, more people working in short-term jobs, gig jobs, and more people working from home. These are big changes that companies really need to adjust to. But there are two more important reasons to think about. First, you remember the big job cuts in 2008 and then again quite recently in 2022 and 23. These were really hard times for many companies, but some companies recovered faster than others. Why? Because they had a good plan for their workers. They didn't cut headcount by a universal rate in every job and department. They had a strategic plan, a strategic organizational plan, which helped them get through the hard times better and be more resilient and get back on track after the crisis was over. Second, we have another big change coming. Many older workers called baby boomers will retire soon. A study from the European Commission said that by 2030, Europe will have 20 million fewer workers. This is a big number. It means we will have fewer people to do the work. So with these big changes, it's quite clear we need a good plan for our workers. This is why strategic workforce planning is so important now. So what sets apart a robust strategic workforce plan from a mediocre one? Let's go into its key characteristics. Firstly, it's aligned with business objectives. It doesn't operate in isolation, but aligns seamlessly with the overarching goals of the organization. Second, it's data-driven. Modern workforce planning isn't about gut feelings, but leverages data and analytics to forecast, strategize, and decide. Third, a standout plan is also adaptable. A business landscape is ever changing, and the workforce plan should be flexible enough to follow the changes. Lastly, it's inclusive and collaborative. It recognizes the value of diverse input and collaborates across the various departments in the organization. So let's take a closer look at the process of strategic workforce planning and how it is embedded in the overall strategic planning process. The first layer is market and competition analysis. Before we plan for our workforce, we need to understand the market and our competition. This will tell us where we stand and where we need to go. There are a couple of tools that can help us here. One is the past analysis, which looks at the political, economic, social, and technological factors. Another tool is Porter's Five Forces. I'm not going to go into details about that one, but you can look it up. And both tools help us see how strong our competition is and where we stand related to the external forces. The second layer is organizational strategy. This strategy is shaped by the market, the products we offer, and of course, our competition. It's our big plan for success. In this phase, we define the job to be done. This is the first step towards designing what are the critical roles that will do this job. It asks what is the organizational blueprint, so to say. The third layer is quality and quantity of the workforce. Now, this is the heart of strategic workforce planning. We ask three main questions. What workforce do we have right now? What workforce will we need in the future? And what's the difference between these two? The difference is called the gap. The fourth layer is HR strategy, because once we identify our workforce gap, the HR strategy will outline how to bridge this gap. This strategy touches upon at least four critical pillars: talent acquisition, performance management, learning and development, and rewards. For talent acquisition, the question is, how do we attract the right talent to fill specific roles and skill gaps? Performance management seeks to answer the question, how do we ensure that our employees are not only efficient, but also effective in their roles? How do we align their goals with the organization's objectives? Fourth is learning and development. What training or skill enhancement do our employees need? How do we prepare them for the future? And last but not least, rewards. How do we motivate and retain our talent? This isn't just salaries at all, but also about recognition, benefits, and career progression. So in essence, we begin by understanding our external environment, develop our strategy based on this, and then evaluate our workforce needs and create a holistic HR approach to achieve our goals. So having understood the flow, let's now delve into the specific steps to execute strategic workforce planning. The first step is organizational strategy and blueprint. When we begin the process of strategic workforce planning, the very first thing we need is a clear and concise organizational strategy. This means we need a well-defined job to be done based on our strategic objectives. What does that really mean? Well, imagine you're building a house. You wouldn't start laying bricks without the plan, right? So the same concept applies here. The blueprint is our organizational strategy, and every brick represents a role or a job function. But the catch is that both our objectives and the job definitions have to be very concrete, because we cannot build on vague ground, right? So if our objective is, for example, I don't know, increasing customer satisfaction, that's a little bit too broad. We need to dig deeper. We need to ask ourselves, how do we aim to achieve that? Maybe the answer is, let's say, by acting promptly on customer feedback. Great, but still the next question should be, how exactly we are going to act promptly upon customer feedback, and so on and so forth. Perhaps at the end of the exercise, the solution is hiring a customer experience lead who can lead and be responsible of this initiative. So every role we consider should be defined not just by its title, but by its attributes, the necessary skills, its organizational level, its location, and so forth. Moreover, we need to define the benchmark of success for that role and the anticipated impact it will have on our organization. In essence, the more specific our starting point is, the clearer a path becomes in workforce planning. Ambiguity is the enemy here. So we want to set our future workforce up for success, and it starts with a well-defined organizational strategy. The second step is workforce mapping. This is practically role segmentation. It's very important to highlight, however, that we don't plan for every role. We focus on the most vital roles, the ones that truly matter for our strategy. The third step is current workforce assessment. Here we take a good look at the people we have right now. What skills and talents do they bring? What are their impact, their potential? We also assess any potential retention risk they might represent. The drill is simple. Focus on the high impact, high potential employees. Those are the ones you want to keep on the boat, right? If there is risk they might want to leave, try to keep them. As for low impact people, either coach them, help them succeed in another role or in the same role but differently, or let them leave or help them leave. The fourth step is scenario modeling. Now, while that's the most exciting, we put on our future-looking hats and imagine what's ahead. Usually we create one, maximum three possible future scenarios and plan for the most possible one at least. The step 5 is supply analysis and forecasting. Now here we try to predict our workforce's future shape. We do this in two ways. First, expected formation, based on what we've seen in the past, where we will be in 3 to 5 years if everything stays the same. The second step is desired formation. Given our future scenarios, what kind of workforce will we want? The step 6 is gap analysis. So this is where we see the differences between our expected and desired formations. It shows us where we need to focus. There are two types of gaps, quantitative gap and qualitative gap, but we're going to talk about that later. Step 7 is action planning. So with the gaps identified, we need to decide how to fill those gaps. This might mean hiring new people or training current employees, or adjusting our performance metrics, or changing our reward strategy, you name it, let it be whatever. Step 8 is revision of the action plans. Strategic workforce planning is an ongoing thing. We need to keep coming back, checking our plans, and making adjustments as things change. Remember, the aim is always to ensure our workforce is aligned with our strategic goals now and, of course, in the future. So, strategic workforce planning, as with all strategic processes, or actually all processes, has its potential pitfalls. So let's navigate through some of the very common traps that organizations often fall into. The first trap is linked to workforce mapping, and it says that when we associate the importance of a role solely with its position in the organizational chart. But remember, not all critical roles are at the top of the organization, and not all top roles are always critical. We're going to do an exercise on that one later. The second typical pitfall is traditional job evaluations, which often miss the dynamic of today's roles. We need to be very cautious and ensure the real value of roles aligns with our strategic direction. So as roles now often emphasize soft skills, cross-functional collaboration, and adaptability, only relying on traditional evaluations can lead to misalignment between perceived role value and its actual strategic relevance. The third pitfall is tied to action planning. A crucial distinction needs to be made in understanding the make versus buy type of roles. Each demands a different HR approach, investment level, and training priorities. Further traps related to workforce assessment include planning for equal turnover for the entire organization without delving deeper, based on historical turnover trends. Then the next one is about the strategic in the strategic workforce planning. That word strategic is really not ornamental. The plan must align clearly and tangibly with the larger business strategy. Moreover, we must recognize the difference between lagging and leading HR indicators. Some of you may have participated in our previous webinar where we talked about that. For those of you who missed it, you can watch the recording. Finally, a trap that many fall into is sidelining top executives from the planning process. Their insights, their buy-in, and direction are pivotal. I cannot emphasize it enough that strategic workforce planning is a co-creation activity. It's absolutely collaborative. You need to involve the relevant stakeholders from the beginning to the end. So today we're going to address some of these traps by going through practical tips and tricks, how you can avoid them. So before you fall asleep, as we dive deeper into strategic workforce planning, it's crucial to recognize the challenges that many of us face. And your insights can help shape our conversation today, so please take a moment to participate in the next poll by answering the following question. What's the biggest challenge you face when conducting strategic workforce planning? If you don't do strategic workforce planning as yet, then come up with your assumption. What would be the biggest challenge if you started it today? So you need to again press the voting button on your screen, which is on the right-hand side of the presentation. And you can type just one or two keywords that best describe your challenge. You have the chance to vote up to 3 times in this round, so highlighting all the top challenges that you assume. And again, answers are anonymous, so neither your fellow attendees nor I will see individual responses. Instead, our system will create a word cloud showing us the most common challenges. So please vote. You need to press the voting buttons. Everyone fell asleep, I assume. Or there are no challenges at all. Let's wait a couple more minutes for everyone to have the chance to vote. Okay. Lack of knowledge and appropriate stakeholders. I wonder what the first one means, appropriate stakeholders, meaning that you don't know who the stakeholders are, or meaning that they are not ready to get going on this planning exercise. Lack of information, management support. Okay, interesting. Yeah, usually the problem is management support, appropriate corporate strategy, unpredictable future. Yeah, that's always a problem. Our HR capabilities, alignment with the business, ability to forecast needs. Okay, so I see 2 types of answer. One is about lack of resources within HR, and the second is lack of collaboration between HR and the rest of the company, if I translate it correctly. That is usually the problem. So what we see with Esther is that in many instances, HR is working in a silo. And I think strategic workforce planning is a great way to step out of this silo and really take the lead in this activity, collaborate with all the rest of the departments, And since it's a co-creation activity, it's not the responsibility of HR by itself. So it needs to be done together with the business. Okay, thanks guys for the answers and the great collaboration. Let's move on to the next one. So as we embark on the journey of strategic workforce planning, our second step is workforce mapping. This step is foundational and sets the tone for the rest of our planning. I said second on purpose because the first one is business strategy. You remember the definition of the job to be done. That's the first step. That is essentially the most important co-creation activity you would need to do or pull through with your business partners. For the sake of simplification, let's assume we have that already. We have the job to be done. We defined it already. Let's go through workforce mapping. At its core, workforce mapping is about role segmentation. It might sound ideal to focus on every single role, but think about the sheer size of your organization. The effort, the time, the cost involved would be monumental. Moreover, it might not provide the kind of ROI we expect from an activity. So this is where the 80-20 rule comes into play. It suggests that we should concentrate on that 20% of roles that influence 80% of our business outcomes. These are our critical roles, the key drivers that make our strategy come to life. But here, I need to do a word of caution because the term critical roles might be totally misunderstood and if it is taken out of context. If we were to ask business leaders about which roles they think are crucial, there's a quite big likelihood they might label their entire team as critical, right? But this response isn't about the deceit, but rather a protective stance to safeguard their resources. And this brings me to two very pivotal points. The first one, we are focusing on roles, not the individuals in those roles. We are not evaluating people's worth in this step, but rather the strategic value of the role itself. Second, it's imperative not to confuse roles with organizational levels or job levels. Higher position doesn't automatically equate to a role being critical. With these clarifications in mind, we can ensure our workforce mapping is effective, efficient, and strategically aligned. So let's discuss some tools that can guide us in this step. There are many tools like this, really tons if you search the internet, but the logic is pretty similar. So I would like to only show three that I like the most. The first one is actually the easiest to understand: strategic versus tactical role segmentation. You should imagine a grid with one axis indicating the role's importance to the business and the other one showing how hard it is to secure someone for that role. So how hard it is to hire for that role versus how important that role is for the business. Of course, in the top right of this grid, we're going to find our strategic roles, while the bottom left houses our tactical roles. But let's not be misled by titles alone. Not every role, as I said before, with strategic in its job title is truly critical. We're going to have an exercise on that one later. Guiding principle here is assessing the risk to business continuity if a role were eliminated. So you should ask yourself, what would happen to the business if we eliminated this role? What is the downside of this tool? Well, basically, it's quite simple that it's rooted in the present. So considering roles as they are now, and the future might require, of course, new roles, especially in tech space. The second tool I like or prefer is the Human Capital Institute models tool. Simply put, it's very similar to the first one. It categorizes roles into four groups: critical roles driving the business strategy, core roles ensuring operational smoothness, supportive roles for internal functioning, and misaligned roles which might be better outsourced or eliminated altogether. Depending on your industry, usually critical roles might account to 10 to 15% of the organization. Again, you should ask yourself when deciding whether the role is critical or not, what happens to business continuity if we eliminated that role? To navigate this model, again, ask the question, which roles propel strategic execution, which have potential to fast-track our strategy's realization, and what competencies are indispensable for executing the strategy. The third model is coming from Tracy Smith. She named it Adapted Method. This method funnels roles into three primary categories: business objectives, current strength of the organization, and future strength. The guiding questions include, first of all, which roles drive business objectives? Second, which roles underpin our current strength we want to preserve? And as we gaze into the future, which roles will bolster new strength, give us an edge over the competition? So in wrapping up this segment, whether you choose any of these models or another, keep these overarching questions front and center. How will our organization stand out and excel in the future? And what must we excel at to succeed? These guiding questions are the lights as we navigate the waters of strategic workforce planning. So as I promised, we're going to have an exercise on that one. So imagine a startup specializing in AI-driven healthcare solutions. AI-driven healthcare solutions. Their primary strategic business goal for the next, let's say, 3 years is to develop a groundbreaking AI tool that can predict health risks based on genetic data. Okay? So your task is to classify roles based on their importance to the company's strategic business goal and their difficulty of acquisition. So how critical it is from a strategic perspective, as well as how difficult it is to hire for that role. Okay, so let's review the given roles. We designed 8 hypothetical roles, each accompanied by a brief job description. So you are going to use a 2-on-2 grid, categorize each role into one of the 4 buckets based on its importance to the company's strategic objective and the challenge of filling the role. Based on the description and the company's objective, decide which quadrant each role belongs to. There are 4 quadrants: strategic, critical, tactical, and supportive. Strategic would mean high importance from a strategic perspective and difficult to obtain. Critical would mean high importance, but easier to obtain. Tactical is not so high importance or lesser importance and easier to obtain. And supportive is lesser importance, but difficult to obtain. Okay, now let's look at the roles. If you haven't done yet, Esther shared a quick tip that if you go to the view, you can click on focus on content, and that makes the presentation bigger so you can also read it, but I'm going to read it out loud for you. So there are 8 roles. Yeah, Esther is sharing it now. So the first one is software engineer with AI specialization. This role designs and develops algorithms for the primary AI tool to analyze genetic data. Remember, we are a startup and we want to do an AI tool which will assess health risks based on genetic data. So that's the first role. Second one is genetic data scientist. This role will interprets and processes complex genetic data sets, ensuring that AI tools' predictions are biologically accurate. The third one is the product manager of the AI tool that we are about to produce. That role oversees the product development cycle, ensures alignment with business goals and user needs. The fourth one is the strategic partnership manager. He will or she will establish partnerships with healthcare institutions, research bodies, and tech companies. He or she will conduct market research and identify potential collaboration opportunities. The fifth is clinical test coordinator. That role organizes and manages patient or client's data collection for AI tool testing and validation. The sixth role is customer support specialist. He will or she will handle inquiries, complaints, and feedback related to the AI tool from the end users. 7 is marketing specialist. That's pretty self-explanatory, or I'm not gonna go into details in that one. And the 8th one is the IT infrastructure manager, who ensures robust and secure tech infrastructure to support the AI tools' online operations, okay? So you can see the job description after each role. So if we go into the exercise, which is this one, please use the voting button to open the exercise. Don't worry, again, there are no right or wrong answers, and your answers will be anonym again. So we're gonna see the aggregate of all the answers. So what you can do is categorize the roles listed. So go to the voting button. Okay. Let's wait a couple more minutes. Let us know if it's not clear what needs to be done. It's really about deepening the understanding. So it's for your sake, because my experience is when I get involved interactively, I remember the content better and understand the content better. So, okay, let's wait one more minute and then I'm going to share our version of the solution. Okay, so thanks guys for the answers. Let's discuss where each of these roles might fit on our strategic tactical grid. So this is how we answered the exercise. Let's start with the first one, software engineer, AI specialization. Blah. So this role is fundamental to the technical backbone of the AI tool. With a specialized focus on AI and its increasing demand, it's probably challenging to obtain such talent. So I think it's quite securely sitting in the strategic quadrant on the very top corner. The next one is genetic data scientist. So again, it's very specific, interpreting genetic data sets and ensuring that the AI tool is accurate. This role is probably very critical and again, hard to fill. So it's clearly again in the strategic quadrant. Next one is product manager, specializing on the AI tool. In my eyes, this is a pivotal role, bridging the technical aspects with the business goals, ensuring that the product is successful. So it's of high importance, but probably it's relatively easier to find a product manager on the market compared to the very niche roles that we discussed so far, the genetic data scientist and the software engineer. So I would put this role in rather in the critical quadrant. The next one is strategic partnership manager. Remember what I said previously? Not all job, so don't mix job title with the assessment how critical the job is. It has strategic in its name, but I think when we look deeper on the job description, it's more about maintaining and establishing relationships, right? That's what this role is doing. So it's, of course, very critical or vital that relationships are managed and established, but it still might lean more towards the critical or even the supportive quadrant. It's relatively easier to fill, and it's not that strategically important as, for example, the first two was. The next one is clinical test coordinator. It's a significant role for ensuring the AI tools is effective and validated, but it might not be as hard to source compared to more technical roles. So it leans towards the critical quadrant. The next one is customer support specialist. It's an essential role for user satisfaction, but probably more straightforward to fill. So it would lean more towards the supportive quadrant. The next one is marketing specialist. Well, with the evolving dynamics of the healthcare tech market, this role is crucial to ensure the AI tool reaches its intended audience. But given its importance and relatively easier obtainability, it probably sits in the critical or even the supportive quadrant. And last but not least, IT infrastructure manager. It's essential for the robust functioning of the AI tool, but given the broader availability of IT professionals with infrastructure expertise, it probably goes more towards the critical and supportive quadrant. Keep in mind that these placements can shift based on the company's specific context, right? And industry nuances, or even other external factors. So with this exercise, I wanted to underscore the essence of truly understanding each role's weight in strategic workforce planning, asking deeper than the job title itself. Any surprises or reflections on these placements? If there are, please put it in the chat. I think it's a great reminder to really look beyond the titles and consider the strategic value. Ask yourself, what will happen to business continuity if we eliminated this role? Okay, so let's delve deeper into our explore. Yeah, difficult to obtain. Yeah, might be on some markets. That's why I said it's depending on the specific context. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. So, just one second. So now that we've got our critical roles mapped out, it's essential to dive deeper and understand our current workforce's landscape. This step, known as workforce assessment, it's twofold: quantitative and qualitative assessment. The quantitative side of things is about diving into the numbers. At a glance, it may seem straightforward. Just analyze the data you have. But it's crucial to remember that numbers don't always tell the full story. For instance, if we've had significant events like, I don't know, merger or layoffs, these can really skew our historical numbers. Here are the key metrics that we need to scrutinize. First is turnover rates. Were there any bigger layoff waves or other one-off events distorting historical turnover rates? The second, average headcount and end of period headcount. how many people on average do we have, and how does it compare at the end of a given period? The next one is average retirement age. At what age are our employees typically retiring? Were there one-off events like, I don't know, early retirement packages or offers that again distort these historical trends? And last but not least, internal replacement or average years in a role. How often are we promoting from within? And how long do people typically stay in one role? It's a good practice to maintain a record of these events that could affect these metrics. This way, we are not just relying on the raw numbers, historical numbers, but adding some context to our understanding. And of course, it's important to differentiate between departments. Universal rate applied to all departments won't give an accurate picture. So each department can have its unique dynamics. The second pillar is qualitative assessment. Here, the focus is on the skills map of those crucial roles we identified earlier. We're trying to get a clear understanding of the strength, the expertise, and capabilities our current team possesses. This is about the depth and breadth of skills, the institutional knowledge our employees have, and how well aligned these are with our strategic goals. If the company has a systematic job catalog and a systematic performance management and employee career development process, this should be a pretty straightforward exercise. If not, however, it can be quite exhausting. But both assessments, when combined, provide a holistic view of our current workforce, setting the stage for future planning. With this foundational understanding, we're better equipped to identify the gaps and understand our workforce true capabilities and potential. So, as I promised, some exercises. So let's dive into an interactive exercise again that will help us understand the importance of examining workforce data over time and identifying any potential anomalies or significant events that might impact our strategic workforce planning. So on the screen, you see a table showing retirement, turnover, and end-of-period headcount data for the years 2010 and 2022. I'd like you to take a couple of minutes to analyze this data. Look closely for any sudden spikes or drops or unusual patterns in the numbers. Once you've identified these anomalies, try to come up with possible reasons behind these changes. Remember, in the real world, numbers never lie, but they might not tell the whole story without context. For instance, a sudden increase in retirements in a particular year might indicate an early retirement program, but I'm not gonna do it for you. So once you had a chance to review, we're gonna discuss the anomalies you've identified and their potential causes. And I'll also share some key events that occurred during these years, which will help validate our challenge our hypothesis. So let me put on the screen where you can go into the exercise. So go under the voting button. I don't see it now. Just 1 second. For some reason it's not coming up. Do you see anything on the screen now, apart from the big white? Because it's not loading for me.
I see the Mentimeter.
Yeah, it's not loading for some reason. Okay, we can skip the voting button. Just I give you a couple of minutes to look through the table and just record it for yourself where you think there might be something, spikes, drops that are unusual patterns in the numbers. And then we're going to discuss. Let's say 2 minutes, okay? couple of more seconds, and then I'm going to share my version of the solution. Okay, so let's look at the numbers. So first thing that pops up probably in 2011, the retirement number. The company might have implemented an early retirement program. That's what led to a spike in the retirements. Then, in years 2013 and 15, we saw significant headcount investments. See, because you see the end of period headcount going up from roughly 2,000 to 2,500, and then again 2,815, which uh, lastly, the sharp rise in turnover in 2022 is another pattern that pops out. That's the turnover number in 2022 is 650 compared to roughly 110, 120 in the previous years. That was probably due to a major layoff wave, for example. So this exercise serves as a reminder of how crucial it is to always dig deeper into workforce data. Never use the historical rates without analyzing the numbers. Because numbers provide insights, but understanding the context behind those numbers is absolutely key to making effective strategic decisions and applying those numbers for the future years for predictions. So thank you for the participation and your observations. Sorry that the voting button didn't work. So after understanding the current workforce landscape, we venture into a pivotal step, scenario modeling. Here, our objective is crystal clear. We aim to ensure that our workforce plans align seamlessly with our business strategy. We need to engage business leaders. It's paramount to involve business leaders in this process. Why? Because they possess insights into the strategic direction, the potential challenges, and opportunities that lie ahead. They can provide context to raw data, anticipate future events like mergers, for example, or market shifts that might have significant impact on our workforce needs. Second, the complexity of the model. Depending on our business's intricacy or complexity, our scenario model can range from very basic to super sophisticated. But regardless of the complexity, the essence of the whole activity remains the same. Our aim is to foresee as accurately as possible the potential future states of our business and by extension, our workforce needs. This model doesn't just help in understanding staffing needs, it's the bedrock of our cost budgeting and capacity plans. Remember, scenario modeling, while precision is very valuable, flexibility is even more important. We are not trying to predict the future with 100% accuracy. That's impossible, right? Instead, we are trying to craft a roadmap that's informed by data, guided by strategy, and adaptable to change. With a well-crafted scenario model, we not only anticipate future challenges, but also position ourselves to leverage future opportunities. So as we look towards the future, it's essential to differentiate between the expected and the desired workforce formation. The expected is what we'll likely see in 3 to 5 years if the company maintains its current trajectory, informed by the metrics like average turnover, retirement trends, etc., the metrics that we discussed earlier. But does this expected future align with our strategic ambitions? That's where the desired formation comes in. Defining the ideal scenario for our workforce is in alignment with our business goals. Now, As we build these formations, we must also factor in the unique challenges and opportunities each future scenario presents. For instance, consider the ripple effects of technological advancements, such as, let's say, self-driving cars or self-driving trains. Such shifts may necessitate strategic responses like redeploying talent or offering severance packages to train drivers or taxi drivers or whichever. Lastly, always be mindful of significant business events on the horizon, such as mergers or acquisitions, and adjust your projections accordingly. Now, as we move further into our strategic workforce planning, it becomes essential to identify the gaps we are dealing with. Now, gaps can manifest in two primary ways. Firstly, there's the quantity gap. This is where we look at the numbers. It's the difference between the workforce we expect to have, given current trends and practices, and the workforce we desire in order to meet our strategic objectives. Sometimes this can even mean we have more people than needed in certain roles. An illustrative example is, for example, the train that driver example that I came up with earlier. We might foresee self-driving trains making train drivers obsolete in the future. Secondly, we have the skill gap. Beyond just numbers, this dives deep into the competencies and capabilities of our workforce. Based on our earlier segmentation and assessment, we need to identify where we might be lacking the skills or expertise necessary for our future. It's about ensuring our people are not just present, but also equipped with the right skills to drive our strategic plan forward. As an example, let's consider a traditional bank, for example. As financial technology progresses, digital banking platforms, online payment solutions, and cybersecurity measures become central to its operation. So if this bank primarily has employees skilled in traditional banking methods, but lacks a robust team skilled in digital banking solutions, cybersecurity, or fintech innovations, that's a clear skill gap. Despite having enough employees addressing the quantity of the workforce, the bank is not adequately equipped with the necessary expertise to navigate the digital banking landscape, highlighting a skill gap. With these understandings, we can begin to shape strategies to bridge these gaps, ensuring our workforce is both ample and adapt to face future challenges. Next, we move on to perhaps the most critical phase of our strategic workforce planning process, addressing the gap. So having identified our gaps, both in terms of quantity and skills, our next step is to determine the best way to bridge them. So let's begin with the different strategies we can employ. So first is build or develop internally. This involves training our current employees to fill the roles we foresee needing in the future. Now, while this might sound ideal as we're working with familiar faces, it can be time consuming, right? Training someone to a new skill can take even years. It's essential to weigh whether we can afford the time it will take to train these employees. And of course, there's the monetary aspect of it. Training isn't free of charge usually, and we must ensure it's a viable option from a budget perspective. The second is buy or hire externally. Now, there's a rule of thumb here. The cost of hiring can be anywhere from 50% of the annual salary for example, an entry-level role, to up to 200% for a complex leadership position. Always bear this in mind when considering this option, buy or hire externally. Next one is borrow or engage gig workers. This is particularly useful for temporary or specialized tasks where hiring full-time might not be the most efficient route. Plus, it's very quick. Then the fourth option is redeploy. Change is inevitable, and with it, of course, certain roles or skill sets might become less relevant or even obsolete. And rather than letting go of these employees, we can consider redeploying them. It's a practical approach to list down the declining skill sets and impacted job roles, understand the depth of the impact. For instance, is the entire role becoming obsolete or just specific tasks within the role? Depending on the situation, our action might vary from retraining to even severance for roles that we can sustain. It's very similar to build internally. So the question is, do we want to build, buy, borrow, or redeploy? The second pillar is 4 key areas for action planning. So with the strategy in mind, our next step is to draft action plans across the 4 pivotal areas we mentioned also earlier in the beginning of the webinar. First is hiring. We need to define the roles we need, the skills we are after, and how we will source these talents. The second is performance management. We need to ensure that our workforce is aligned with our future needs and that they are meeting or exceeding these expectations. That's performance management. Remember, impact and potential. The third one is learning and development. That's quite straightforward. This is where we ensure our employees are equipped with the skills they'll need tomorrow, not just the ones they use today. And the last one is rewards. It's essential to incentivize the right behaviors, ensuring that as our employees grow and adapt, they feel also valued and motivated. So, in a sense, this phase is all about proactive adaptability. It's about preparing for tomorrow, today. So, I know we covered a lot, and it is totally okay not to fully grasp everything all at once, because strategic workforce planning is actually really the most complicated area in strategic HR, but also, of course, one of the most important ones, and one that differentiates a traditional HR team from a true strategic HR team. And if there's only 3 things that you take away from this session, you will already be better equipped than before. One, the first, the most important, is that strategic workforce planning is a co-creation activity driven by HR. Driven and not done, I need to emphasize that, a crucial difference. Second, strategic workforce planning is not a one-off exercise. It's not like headcount budgeting or financial forecasting. It is the sort of like a flashlight that helps us navigate forward. And third, don't worry if you feel overwhelmed and lost. We are here to help you. Me and Esther have done plenty of strategic workforce planning cycles in big multinationals, so we are ready to assist you. If you're hesitant how to get started, reach out to us, and we are absolutely happy to schedule a 30-minute call and walk you through the framework we designed and use with our clients. It's a very comprehensive framework taking you through the steps that we discussed today. Of course, it's not a self-serve activity, but we are here to help and assist you in every step. If you schedule a 30-minute call, these are snapshots from our framework, by the way. And if you schedule a 30-minute call, we can walk you through our framework and prepare a strategic workforce planning one-pager, which you can bring then to your CEO or whoever is the decision maker at your organization to facilitate the buy-in and get the process going. So reach out to us, schedule a call, and we are really happy to help you. As we come to the end of the session, I would like you to invite again to think through some key questions. These were the same in the first webinar, but I think these are really the most important ones if you want to land your learning and the key takeaways. The first one is, what were the key learnings for you? Think through How can you apply the learnings in your organization? What would be the first step for you, apart from scheduling a call with us? And what challenges do you anticipate when going down this road? Preparing for the challenges is part of a successful plan. So, also for you, it is key to understand what are the pitfalls you need to be careful with. If you want to share, you can do it in the chat. Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Also, drop us an email if you have special requests. What topic is top of mind for you? What would you like to see from us? What else we should talk about in terms of any topic that we are up to, which is people analytics and Microsoft Viva. Stay tuned for new content. We are really trying to put informative and engaging content on our LinkedIn every day. So stay tuned for that. Get in touch and see you in 1 month. Thank you guys and enjoy your weekend and lunch. Bye.